Welcome to the Impact Africa edition, powered by fintech.tv. My name is Kavita Gupta.
And I'm Vince Molinari, and we're broadcasting you from New York City.
We are very excited about our show today. Vince, we are talking about the first time access to internet. Just imagine, like, if today we just wake up one day and it's our first time entry to this whole crazy world of social media and internet. What would you do?
Well, it's really amazing. You know, you can't even fathom it. You know, with my 4 kids who are on some level of devices seeming all the time, to imagine that, what is it like to see something on a device for the first time? You're opening up a whole new world, right? And access. It's just totally remarkable.
But I think most of the people, at least like in emerged markets, developed markets, when they think of internet, they think of social media, they think of Twitter and Facebooks of the world. But imagine if there's a divide because of education, especially given today's COVID time. We have seen even in United States how not having access to proper internet or good speed internet, not able to do classes online.
Well, such a powerful thing if we can begin to close the digital divide. Access to communication, internet, rural communities. We're really changing the paradigm of education, to healthcare, to economics, right? And I think that begins to melt away levels of disparity and inequality.
No, I agree. I mean, initially we were like, from World Bank and IFC, we always looked into how to get better quality of internet, but we forgot that there are all the places outside the main cities who don't even have internet. And I think it's a huge topic in Africa, with companies like BRIC coming and trying to have devices which can boost to 100 miles to 50 miles. And with Google and Facebook talking about the first ever internet access through different satellite connection. I think, as you said, this is going to revolutionize the way the proper parity or equality conversation, which is going to go.
Well, I think, again, it goes to the core. If you can think about the power of the continent of Africa, the youth, the innovation that's coming out of the continent, and now you can expand that to rural communities, more connectivity. You don't know what the next invention, what the next cure, what is going to come from that when we begin to empower more people with access.
Yeah, I agree. The first time access. And I think that's the key, and that's what we are very excited to cover in today's show. The first time access to internet and how it can help from education tech to health technology to fintech, inclusivity at every stage. So why don't we join our correspondent and our host, Irene, in Kenya and learn more about it.
Asante sana Kavita. My name is Leangari, coming all the way from Kenya. And by the way, here in Kenya, we do say on TV, tunashukuru unatazama, which means we're glad you're watching. Now, we have more than 3.8 billion mobile internet subscribers globally, which accounts for 49% of the global population. The mobile internet adoption stands at 26% in sub-Saharan Africa at the end of 2019, which means the adoption has not been equitable. Well, my next guest is keen on making internet services easily accessible, with in mind the vision of turning Africa from a continent into one community. Today, we are hosting a gentleman. His name is Eric Hersman, who is a technologist who is very keen on advancing the use of technology in Africa. A little bit more about Eric Hersman is the fact that he is the CEO of BRCK, which creates software and hardware solutions for connectivity in frontier markets. In 2010, he founded the iHub, Nairobi's innovation hub for the technology community, bringing together entrepreneurs, hackers, designers, and the investment community. A little bit more as well, he is also a co-founder of Ushahidi, the free and open source software for crowdsourcing crisis information. Eric, thank you so much for making time. Your keen interest in advancing technology in Africa. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, I grew up here in Kenya, and so when I went to the US, went to university, and I came back, I was really interested in this intersection of Kenya specifically, but Africa as a whole, and how technology was coming into the continent and how much opportunity there was. There wasn't any gatekeepers. There's a lot of opportunity for both companies to be built, investors to get involved, and for just a lot of jobs opportunity to come from it.
When you look at that time and now, where we are right now in terms of the use of technology, what would you say is the current status?
I mean, it's accelerated. We're way beyond. When we first started talking and writing about these things, it was back in 2005, so 15 years ago. And 15 years ago is a very different landscape than it is today. Whether it was talking about the types of mobile phones people had, the data connectivity people had, the number of software engineers in the country, the types of jobs that were available in that digital economy. It was like a desert compared to the flourishing, forest that we have today of connectivity and inexpensive mobile phones. The spread of those to all corners of the continent have made opportunities that weren't there before really be realized.
Let's talk about Kenya. Case in point, Kenya is said to have one of the fastest internet penetration in Africa. And when you look at this particular, perception that many have, would you say this has been an advantage to Kenya in terms of advancing e-commerce and other, frontiers that would benefit us in terms of internet penetration?
I think you have to absolutely say that it has. The reason why Kenya sits on the forefront, really one of the three countries in the continent that has the best chance of making good economic outcomes come from the internet and mobile phones and all these things that coincide together, technology as a whole, is because it moved fast and moved first. And what we're seeing too is that in Kenya, we had a small amount of legislation years ago that didn't get in the way of new innovations happening. Nowadays, that's constricting a little bit. But the reason that we have tools like M-Pesa, the reason why Ushahidi could be built, the reason why different e-commerce and different fintech companies are doing well is because over time, we've been able to hold back the regulators a little bit and allow things to expand and grow on their own. And that growth of new companies has allowed us to take a first mover advantage.
Now, Eric, when you look at the history, your experience as someone who's a pioneer of advancing technology in Africa, what would you say is that one solution that perhaps the African governments or even the Kenyan government can pursue in perhaps achieving the reality, perhaps in the future, of making internet accessible even to the person who is in the poorest of communities?
So Kenya has done better than most countries in Africa on this front, which is putting both public-private partnerships together around internet connectivity. So the undersea cables, even some of the terrestrial cables that are inside of Kenya's borders. And those are all good. And I think actually the government activity, when it's best spent around infrastructure and light regulation in that space, so that it encourages the right kind of business activity that can actually take something forward and make it truly accessible across the country. So it goes back to Bitange Ndemo when he was the permanent secretary, and it goes through to today with what we're seeing with Joe Musheru as the cabinet secretary, where back with Dr. Ndemo, it was the undersea cables and those kind of infrastructure projects that happened. Fantastic. And then today, to what we see with Musheru, what he's doing with the balloons and trying to get access to some of these farther away areas, these geographies of Kenya that are really hard to get towers into, and the return on investment for those towers would never be seen, right? So, if I were to take it one more step beyond that, what I would say is, let's start seeing what investment into a wholesale neutral network would look like. So the last thing then is regulation in that space, which starts with the Communications Authority and the rules that are allowed for people to get access to spectrum. Because if you want to deal with the biggest problem, it starts at that foundation of fiber and spectrum. If you can deal with that fiber and spectrum level and open that up for more innovative players, you can get new business models layered on top of it, which quite frankly, the ISPs and the mobile operators today have no desire to do because they're making money hand over fist with their current business models.
You've mentioned something key. Let's talk about regulations now. When you look at using regulations to accelerate the internet connectivity in Kenya, what would you say the current regulations have done for us? Have they been supportive of accelerating this?
Mostly. So if you look back at the regulations that came through till about 2014, 2015, they had really good foundations for us to continue to be innovative and fresh in our approach to on the new things that can happen. You know, we've been slowed down in regulation in a couple areas since then, where we're going to lose our lead if we're not careful to the other nations in Africa who are willing to kind of bite the bullet to understand that there's a new way of thinking about business, about money, about the internet. So the biggest and worst one is the very recent one, which is the Finance Bill 2018, which imposes a 15% tax on the internet, any earnings on the internet in Kenya.
What would you say in a nutshell would be the uptake for BRIC at this moment, especially considering what you're talking about, taking everything, you know, well, education to the digital platform?
So, I mean, what we've seen is there's a couple things going on, especially with the coronavirus pandemic, is that there is a massive demand for internet, and at the same time a decrease in spending capital that any family had. So all of a sudden our services were more valuable than they were before. Now, at the same time, we had another problem, which is all the matatus were taken off the road, or most of them. And so our transportation business suffered during that time. But our fixed locations, where we're in public spaces, we saw a massive demand of the amount of data being used. People just really needed it for school and for entertainment, for all the things that we use the internet for in our normal lives. You know, if I was to say that the biggest lesson I've learned from this time around the need for connectivity, it's that we've seen a massive growth in the technology world, in e-commerce and fintech. Bringing those down past middle income Kenyans to everybody in the country is where the real potential lies. And you know, I think we provide access with BRIC to that user, and we provide a tool, a platform that allows for that person to do digital work. And this is where it gets interesting. I think that, and stats show this, that one of the biggest potential growth areas, not just in Kenya, but across Africa, is in the digital economy.
Thank you for making time,
Thank
and
you,
we hope to have you again on The Impact. Let's take a short break. Don't go too far. Welcome back to the show. What will we be without the internet? Look at what the internet has done for us, easing e-commerce, making education accessible, and not forgetting the much needed e-health services that we're now getting right from the comfort of our homes. With the 4 key pillars of mobile internet adoption being infrastructure, affordability, consumer readiness, the content available and services, here to take us further into this discussion is our correspondent from Kenya.
Thank you, Leah. And as you said, Sub-Saharan Africa actually accounts for almost 50% of the global population that is not covered by mobile broadband network. Now, here to speak about bridging the digital divide is Mr. George Njuguna, who is the Director of IT at Safaricom PLC, and he has more than 19 years experience in IT and 13 years experience in banking and financial services. Now, Safaricom PLC is a listed Kenyan mobile network operator, and it is the largest telecommunications provider in Kenya and one of the most profitable companies in East and Central African region. Thank you so much for making time today, Mr. George. All right, and so we'll just dive straight into it. And I think the major question that people would be wondering is, what exactly is Safaricom doing to bridge the digital divide between the rural and urban areas?
Well, I'll talk about 3 things. I think the first thing is, I think this really hit home for me, and if I talk as an individual, during COVID. I found ourselves in a situation where most of the students in the country, and I'm talking looking at our young generation of kids, as well as people all the way to university, could not continue with their education. Now, the people who are in private schools, who had access to internet actually continued learning. And for me, that really hit hard. Now, we did a couple of things in terms of offering free services, in terms of learners being able to access links, in terms of zero rating them, therefore becoming free for students to learn. But the bigger thing is the activities we've done, because without coverage, you can't have internet. So what we've done, we've covered over 95% of the country with 4G, which is, I'd say, quite an advanced technology in terms of internet access. So by ensuring that the country is covered, we have fiber, we have 4G, that means people can get on the internet. The second thing that we've done that I think is most significant is our device financing proposition that we worked on. We built in-house together working with Google. So this is the first of its kind where subscribers pay only 20 shillings a day to be able to actually get a smartphone. So you pay a deposit of 500 shillings and then you pay 20 shillings a day. This was really bridged by understanding how people operate in Kenya. We get the Kimbo for 10 bob, the Blue Band for 10 bob. So instead of getting a proposition where you expect somebody to spend 5,000 shillings or $50 to buy a phone, how can we look at people's habits where they actually buy things in small pieces? So you look at most of the people in the informal sectors at the bottom of the pyramid, they actually are able to get 100, 200 shillings a day, 500 shillings through their wages. But sometimes getting that large sum is an issue. So how could we package a proposition and lend them a phone at an affordable rate and then find a way that they can pay daily for it? So that's the second thing. So we got the coverage that's been increased. Then we got the fact that we're providing the devices. How I look at this is the network we provide are the rails. Then you have the devices are the cuts on the rails. Then the services, which is my number 3 point, are the passengers on the rails. So you can build rails, but if you don't have people, you don't have trains on those rails, then it's of no purpose. But again, you have the trains on the rails, but you have the people, and those are the services. So the third thing we're doing is we're looking at things like content, be it education content, be it content that helps our young people in terms of expressing their talent, in terms of our content proposition for, let's say, music, acting, and being able to enable them to do that. So I think that's key. But I also believe what would help a lot is just being able to see some of these services, be it devices, how can some of these be manufactured locally? Because for most of these, if not all of them, most of these devices are being imported into Kenya.
All right, and of course, still on education, and you've spoken, about it a little bit. But I do know that Safaricom is making deliberate efforts towards contributing towards, education. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, one of the things we zero-rated the curriculum organizations' links. That was pretty good. We also worked with a lot of the local universities in order for their students to also be able to access services on the internet during this time as students move to learn from home. But I think the biggest piece, and I think the one that will make the most impact, is to see, because you can have all this content availed on the internet, we can zero rate it, but if people don't have the devices, then they can't access it. So no matter what has been published on the internet, no matter the links that we have, that's why we're focused on this device piece. And also looking for partners who can help in terms of providing these devices to learners, to marginalized communities, so that they can be able to access. Because what you can do on a smartphone versus a feature phone versus a basic phone is totally different. You find the person with a smartphone, even if we've made services quite affordable and we're offering value, but without a smartphone you can't do much. And that's why our device financing program is an extremely important one in being able to bridge this divide.
All right, and still on partnerships, you have had several partnerships with multiple corporates just to try and digitize their systems. What efficiencies have this created?
No, I think it's exciting. I mean, you look at things, I may not mention the companies, but if I describe what it is, you look at organizations that are able to offer people electricity or lighting in rural communities. A lot of them ride on our mobile money platform as well as on our network. You look at a company like MGAS, that is offering services in part of Nairobi, in some of the, I would say, lower income neighborhoods, in terms of people being able to use clean energy. You find that they're also using our platform, be it our IoT proposition, our mobile money proposition, to do that. So what I think is partnerships really help, because we can't do everything. We need partners who come to the table, who develop solutions, who help us sometimes on the last mile, who are willing to also invest, as we've done. We invest about 35 billion shillings a year in terms of capex into building our network and making sure our systems are up to par. But we need other partners who are investing. And I think some of the development organizations can help. I look at some of the work we do in Kakuma in terms of being able to distribute services to the communities there. I think it makes a very big impact to the refugees, and that's also been done as part of partnerships. We look at also the work that our foundations are doing, be it the Safaricom Foundation, M-Pesa Foundation. Through this entire COVID period, we partnered with the government to offer services in terms of reporting COVID cases. The call center proposition was fully done within Safaricom at no cost. We also been able to deliver relief funds in partnership with the government to people who are the most vulnerable during this period. So I think on and on, you'll find a lot of propositions that we're able to offer, because we're committed. We talk about being the company that puts people and purpose before profit. And we talk about our purpose being transforming lives. So at the heart of that is really being able to offer this. Recently, we've worked with the TVET, the technical universities, to be able to offer them devices and other services for their learners. And I can go on and on about different things that we've done within the communities. Last year, I was fortunate to accompany our CEO as we went to a correctional facility in Kakamega, where we had built them a complete lab, where the students there, even if they've probably been incarcerated for various reasons and they are learning, they also deserve to learn ICT. But they were not, because they didn't have a lab. And so we actually went for the ICT piece, and we're like, maybe the next great developer is going to come from that institution. Maybe the Mark Zuckerberg of Kenya is going to come from such a place. But if we've not provided them with access, we've not provided them with the opportunity, we cannot be able to know the skills that are out there.
Right, it's been quite the informative interview. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. George. And we've actually, I believe we now have a clearer picture of how exactly, where we stand actually when it comes to bridging the digital divide. So thank you so much for your time. And with that, we do have a clearer picture of what it is going to take to bridge the digital divide. It is back to you, Leah.
Well, thank you so much, Usha. Indeed, internet adoption is definitely on the spike, especially with the current pandemic. I mean, looking at the numbers, one would imagine that they have the potential to double up in the near future. Smartphone and mobile internet usage across the globe continues to grow. With smartphones being the primary source of internet connectivity, the demand for these devices is set to grow as the years go by. In sub-Saharan Africa, the populations there, some of them are further along in the adoption process than others. Yet, the process is rapidly moving. Africa is catching up fast. My name is Leangari. Until next time, Baraka.